So welcome along. Very good to have you here. Um, this is the third international online chess course, and it's a special centenary edition. So it's part of the celebration of Bante's centenary. And my name is Jnanadhara. I think I've met all of you. I don't think we've met Yodini. I don't think. Yeah. Okay. Well, you're very welcome. Um, and this is taking place twice. So we met this morning. There was about 15 or 16 or 17 of us this morning. Well, this morning you take UK time. If you're in the Americas, it was in the middle of the night. We had Farah Maitri who joined us from Venezuela at 4 o'clock in the morning. So that's commitment for you. Um, and so um, I'll just let you know what we're going to be doing today. And so I'm going to do an introduction to the course. I'm going to let you know what we're going to be doing, and then we'll have a chance just to share. And there's Smriti right now. And then I'll talk about our theme for the week. After the break, we'll have a break for 10 minutes. So the theme for the week is Bhante as devotee, and then we'll have another session. We'll probably have, because there's eight of us, we'll probably have two breakout rooms, so two groups of four. Um, and just to say, just a housekeeping thing, if there's any hassle with Zoom, if the meeting ends or something random happens, just check your email. Yeah, so I'll email you and let you know what's going on. So yeah, so just a bit about the course. So I've been running these courses for the last 2 years as part of my work as international movement coordinator. So the last 2 years we've been really looking at the question, well, what is a center chair? And asking the question, what do they do that nobody else does? Particularly with a view to their role, or your role, in consensus decision making. So this year I wanted to do something fresh. I wanted to do something new. And I thought, well, why not do something for Bante's centenary? Um, and that's very much been the focus of a lot of the work I've been doing this year. So recently I hosted an online element to the celebrations that were happening for his birthday at Istana. And for me, the centenary is a really good opportunity to have a fresh look at Bante, just to kind of see if we can see him with new eyes. I think you could be kind of become accustomed to Bante and you settle into a particular sense of him and a particular sense of who he was. So for me, the centenary is an opportunity just to step back from that, to put it down, and to have another look and to see what we can learn. So I'm hoping this course will be like that. It'll be an opportunity just to have another look and to see what we can learn from him. So I wanted to say a little bit now just about the inspiration for the course a little bit more specifically. So I went to see Bante in 2010, and he was living at the time at Mudgee Maloka in Birmingham in the UK. And I wasn't sure why I wanted to go and see him. I'd just become the chair of the Dublin Buddhist Centre, and I just thought it'd be good to go and see Bante. And it was a bit strange to me. I never wanted to go and see him before. I'd met him on a few occasions, but with groups, around the dinner table. But I never had a desire to see him one to one. I always wondered, well, what would I talk to him about? But I did for some reason want to go and see him, and I didn't really know why. But it occurred to me at some point that the reason I wanted to go and see him, and this is what I said to him when I met him, he was sitting in his red chair in his little study in this little flat next to Mudgee Maloka, and I said to him, Bante, I wanted to come and see you because I feel I'm continuing your work. It kind of occurred to me why it was I wanted to see him. It might have, I can't remember, but it might have been actually just when I was sitting there. It kind of occurred to me. And he said, in response to me saying I wanted to come and see you because I feel I'm continuing your work, he said, well, it's very good that you came. A very, very strong kind of affirmation of that thought. Uh, in a way, that was it. I just wanted to make a connection with him because I felt somehow, in some way, that that was the basis from which I was working. I was continuing the work that he started. It was a tree Ratna centre that I was the chair of, and I was promulgating his particular vision of the Dharma. So I think that it was important for me, but I think there is something about our work as chairs. There's something about establishing that connection, having quite a strong connection. He clearly thinks that's important. He's talked about that on a number of occasions, having that connection. And of course, now we can't see him. We can't go and see Bante anymore. So we have to connect with him if we wish to make a connect with him through imagination, which is, an entirely valid way of connecting with somebody. We can make a real connection. So of course, one of the ways we can do that is through the practice of the Kalyana Mitra Yoga. So this, of course, is one of the five Mula Yogas. Sometimes there's four, sometimes there's five. The other ones, of course, being the Bodhicitta practice, the Vajrasattva visualization and mantra recitation, the going for refuge and prostration practice, and the offering of the mandala. So there's various versions of the practice in current in the order, practiced in the order. Um, I've got a little slide just to remind us of that practice. Some of you will be familiar with this image. It's an image that Aloka made, which is an image of the gurus of the past and the present, which you see above your head when you do the practice, or variously you see them in front of you. And of course, if Bhante wasn't your precept, your public and private preceptor, you see your private and public preceptors above your head below Bhante. Um, so yeah, the most essentialized version, which is the version that Bhante encouraged people to practice, was basically it's just the Buddha, Shakyamuni, Bhante, and your private and public preceptors if they're not Bhante above your head. And this, of course, has been practiced during the centenary year on Sundays, on the first, I think it's the first Sunday of the month, or maybe it's the third. Anyway, it's one every month that happens. And of course, during that practice, you're developing receptivity to the Kalyana Mitra, it's establishing a connection. And if you wish, you can have the Kalyana Mitra just descend into your heart. So it's quite a strong practice. I've been doing it partly because partly because I like it, but partly because of the focus of this year. I've been doing it regularly. And this course, basically, the reason I'm talking about this is this course is basically like a Kalyana Mitra Yoga in the form of a course. So the Kalyana Mitra Yoga is like the archetype for what I want to do with this 6 week course. There's a little bit more to say about it, and that is that I remember talking to Ashvajit. Some of you will know Ashvajit. He was my private preceptor, and he died a couple of years ago. So it's kind of doubly poignant doing the Kalyana Mitra Yoga because Bante's no longer with us, but also my private preceptor is no longer with us. And well, just to speak personally for a moment, it's been lovely. I didn't realize that I missed the fact that I couldn't go and see him, but it was when I started doing the practice and I re-established a sort of more of a personal connection that I realized that I appreciated having that connection a bit more alive in my life because I couldn't go and see him in the way that I used to. So anyway, I was talking to Ashajit when he was alive. I had so many fascinating conversations with him, and I wish now I'd written more of them down. I wrote a few of them down, but one of them was he was talking about Dada Rinpoche and a meeting that he had with Dada Rinpoche, presumably in Kalimpong, and he was talking to Dada Rinpoche about the Guru Yoga and how he should practice it. And what Dada Rinpoche said to him was, you should think about Bante um, in as many different ways as you can, and as many different manifestations as you can. So that really struck me that Dada Rinpoche was giving that advice. Think of Bante, think of Sangharakshita, in as many different manifestations or in many different ways as you can. So me and Ashajit started to muse on what all those different manifestations would be. Teacher, friend, writer, mystic, poet, etc. And of course, that's very reminiscent of the of Padmasambhava. So Padmasambhava, of course, is the archetypal guru. It's like Padmasambhava is often said to have these two. It's sometimes said there are two Padmasambhavas. There's Padmasambhava, the historical figure who, with Shantarakshasa and so on, established Buddhism in Tibet. And then there's Padmasambhava as the archetypal guru. And of course, Bhante has a strong affinity with Padmasambhava, as we know. And Padmasambhava has these different manifestations. This is part of the inspiration for the course, is the eight manifestations of Padmasambhava, who are all manifestations or all embodiments of his upaya, his skillful means. So he benefits beings in manifold ways and takes whatever form is needed. Um, so yeah, so I've got some pictures of the manifestations of Padmasambhava. So, ooh, um, so these are the pictures that Bhante acquired in Kalimpong of the eight manifestations. Interestingly, the most the common form of Padmasambhava that we're used to, with the red robes and the Katvanga and so on, doesn't appear in the set of eight, curiously. Um, so that figure there is Pema or Padmasambhava in Sanskrit. And then the next one is Lodin Chogsed. And then you've got Padma Gyalpo. So they're both kind of kingly archetypes. Um, and then you've got Urgyen Dorje Chang. There he is. Ayab Yum Padmasambhava. And then you've got a kind of tantric yogin cremation ground Padmasambhava, Nyingma Odza. And then you've got Shakya Singay, the lion of the Shakyas. And then you've got Singay Dradog. I'm not sure if my pronunciation is correct, but I'm sure you'll forgive me. Um, and then finally there is Ujjayi Drolon. So those are the eight manifestations of Padmasambhava, and they're very much the inspiration as well for this course. And we're going to be looking at Bhante in a similar kind of way and reflecting on the different ways he manifested in his life to benefit people. Um, so what are they? So yeah, so we're going to be reflecting on the manifestations and also reflecting on what we can learn from that in our work as chairs of Buddhist centers. Um, So, I'm just going to talk just a little bit about each one that we're going to be looking at. Um, so, so yeah. So first of all, we're going to be looking at Bhante as devotee. So that's this evening's theme. Um, and then Bhante as Kalyana Mitra. So yeah, of course, friendship is a key theme in his teaching and a key theme in his life and central to our order and our movement. Um, so we'll look at, what part does friendship play in the work that we do? And then there's Bhante as writer. So there's a whole kind of constellation of different manifestations, writer, communicator, poet. Um, but I just thought I'd settle on one, which is writer. So sometime he said, I'm not sure if I'm a writer who happens to be a Buddhist or a Buddhist who happens to be a writer. So we're going to be looking at the significance of the fact that he was a writer, um, and how we follow on from what he's written, how we make sense of what he's written, how we benefit from that and bring the benefit of what he's written and what he's communicated into our situation. And then there's Bhante as Yogin. So I wanted to, I suppose, kind of honor that aspect of Bhante's life that, meditation was woven through his life and some sort of mystical, for want of a better word, experience. There's all these little moments of uncanniness that you read about in his memoirs, for example, and that people recount. Some of the stories that Ashajit recounted were quite strange, encounters with Sangharakshita and all kinds of uncanny things going on. So I wanted to honor that, yeah, that kind of inner dimension of Bante's life and talk about it as much as possible to talk about. And also to point to how do we bring that kind of spirit into what we're doing? How do we honor that aspect of his life and that aspect of our lives as Dharmaferas and even as human beings? There's this sort of non-rational, um, deeply felt secret element to what we're doing. Um, in the fifth week, I wanted to look at Bante as lover. So this, of course, brings into the picture some of the aspects of what he did in his life that have been problematic for some people and certainly problematic for us as a Buddhist community. So I wanted to again honor that and try and understand that together and um, just ask ourselves how we relate to that, and also how do we communicate to the wider Sangha about those aspects of Bhante. So it seemed really important to talk about that as part of this exploration. And finally, there's Bhante as revolutionary. So I wanted to include that as well. I mean, I'm using that expression slightly provocatively, but there was such a strong aspect of his life and work which was concerned with the transformation of the world. So concerned with the Dharma, not just as a transforming agent for an individual human being, but as a transforming agent for the world in which we all live. So this, of course, very much follows on from his contact with the new Buddhists of India, the disciples of Dr. Ambedkar. So this is what we're going to be looking at that week is how do we think about and express that central aspect of his life and teaching, and how do we bring it alive in our situations, that altruistic dimension. So there's so many other aspects of Bante's life that you could explore. I'm aware of that. I mean, I did toy with the idea of talking about Bante as outcast or outsider, Bante as true individual. But whichever way we're going to talk about him, I very much wanted it to be Bante as devotee or Bante as Kalyana Mitra. I think there's something significant in the word Bante. It's a relate. It's like we know it's an honorific. It's what one calls a bhikshu in the Theravadan tradition. But for us, it's become a kind of relational word. It's like almost like not just an honorific, but kind of like almost like a kinship word that we have a particular relationship with him. I'm partly saying that because I'm not trying to be objective in this course. I'm not coming at this as a biographer, as it were. I'm coming at it more as a disciple and as an order member. So I've got some of my thoughts. I've been thinking about this well, I've been involved in Triratna for almost 30 years, and I encountered him pretty early on. Um, and, I've been thinking about him, encountering him in different ways in that time. And of course, some of you, well, all of you have encountered him in all kinds of ways yourselves. So, some people have been around for a long time, others for less time. But we've all got our thoughts, we've all got our feelings, we've all got our perspectives. So hopefully, what I'm hoping is that, what I'm doing is just in a way providing a springboard for us all to reflect and to share our reflections with each other. And I'm aware that it's quite difficult, probably not even desirable, to kind of be emotionally neutral about all of this stuff. Some quite strong feelings are evoked when one talks about one's teacher. And Yeah, I did feel a little bit nervous about this topic, interestingly. And oh, what will people, if I put it like that, how are people going to feel about that, and so on. But we're all order members, and we're all trained and experienced in responding creatively to complex communication, if it should arise. And also, we're all chairs of Buddhist centers in one way or another. And what I've noticed is that chairs of Buddhist centers are among the most intelligent, creative, and committed order members that we have. So, we're all going to be fine. Um, yeah. I don't know what that means in Hunter. Is that what they do in Brooklyn? Yeah. Okay. Cool. And yeah, so we'll have breakout rooms each week. We won't, there won't be so much time in breakout rooms this week just because there's a bit of setting up to do. But what we've done in the past is we've tried to have continuity between each week, but I thought this time let's just do random breakout rooms. So you get to meet a range of people, hopefully. Some people said that they'll come on session one or session two. So some of the people who'll come next week might be different from the people who are here tonight. So it'll be an opportunity to talk to people that we might not have met before. Just to say, if you got any feedback about the course, like if things you liked, things you didn't like, things you'd like to talk about, I don't know, just anything, I'd be really interested to hear from you. You could just send me a wee note, or if you got my WhatsApp, you could send me a voice note. I'm going to do a video of each session, so if you miss a week, you can catch up if you want to, and I'll send an email with a link to the video and some of the material that I've been talking about. So, I'm going to quote from a few things tonight, so I'll send you that material if you're interested. And there's no charge for the course, as I've said. So this today actually is the last day of the 3-year funding cycle that I've had for this job that I'm doing, the International Movement Coordinator job. So I do have some funding lined up. It's a little bit tenuous, but hopefully, it'll come through in something in a slightly more sustainable and solid form. It's all to play for. But yeah, so there's no charge for the course, and I also just wanted to give a shout out to Aparajita, who's been very helpful, particularly with the online stuff. He built the website for the course and so on. Um, so yeah, so we'll meet in small groups. Let's see, how long have we got? Oh, we've actually got a little bit of time. So well, um, we've got about let's say 35 minutes. So we'll come back at on the hour. And there'll be four of us in each group. So what I thought we could do is well, I've got a couple of prompts really. I mean, of course, you can talk about whatever you want to talk about, but so basically, there's yeah, your name. You can say your name and say a little bit about your center. So where are you? What's going on? As much as you feel is appropriate. And then I'd invite you just to talk about the nature of your relationship to Bhante. So yeah, what significance does that relationship have in your Dharma life? What significance does that have in your work as a chair of your center, or anything else that feels relevant? So yeah, it just feels important just to open a space where we can say whatever we want before I start talking about them in a particular way. So yeah, oh, where have I gone? Does that sound all right? Yeah. So we'll have two groups of four. So and it'll just be random.
So they're
So
ready to go, Jnanadhara.
wait, well, if you want to press the go button and
Alrighty, and you can join room two.
okay, fantastic. Okay, so we'll make a start. So yeah, I wanted to talk about this, the first of our manifestations, the first of our themes. I wanted to talk about Bhante as devotee, and I'm going to try and have a photo for each of these manifestations. So this is the one for this week. It's quite a famous photo of Bhante. Um, there he is, Bhante as devotee. And I wanted to start with a poem where he's expressing this, I think, very beautifully and very eloquently, and in a way, very succinctly. So this one is called Above Me Broods. Above me broods a world of mysteries and magnitudes. I see, I hear, more than what strikes the eye or meets the ear. Within me sleep potencies deep, unfathomably deep, which, when awake, the bonds of life, death, time and space will break. Infinity above me, like the blue sky, do I see. Below in me lies the reflection of infinity. So he wrote that poem in 1947. So he would have been 21 or 22. And it's very strongly evocative of a relationship with something higher, you could say, or something deeper, a relationship with the mysterious aspect of life. In a way, it doesn't need much commentary. It sort of speaks for itself. But I just want to draw out a few things from it. One is the strange use of the word brood. Um, when you I looked it up in the dictionary and I was quite surprised by what it actually means. So a brood, of course, is the literal meaning is a clutch of baby birds. That's a brood. So often it's used, people talk about their brood, they talk about their children. Um, but it also means to think deeply about something that makes one unhappy, angry, or worried. Uh, that's actually, and I looked it up in several dictionaries, and they all say more or less the same thing. So it's actually it's a word with a slightly dark tinge to it, which I find peculiar. It never came across that to me before, but there's something about that word brood, which I think is really interesting. There's something above which is brooding. It's of course there's the sense in brood, which is in the more neutral sense of a bird sitting, being broody, sitting on its eggs, and something's potentially there, which I think is probably more the sense of why it means it. There's a sort of a potential there above him. Above me broods a world of mysteries and magnitudes. And he's got some kind of sense of that. I see, I hear more than what strikes the eye or meets the ear. So it's something, an intuition or um, a feeling that's not necessarily connected with the senses. Um, and then he says, within me sleep, potencies deep, unfathomably deep. So again, you get this very strong uh, suggestion of potential or potentialities, even power, a sort of latent power. He says, potencies deep, unfathomably deep, which when awake, the bonds of life, death, time, and space will break. So there's a real sense of a latent power, a latent kind of transformative power, or something that brings about a certain turning about. When awake, the bonds of life, death, time, and space will break. And then in the last stanza, I mean, throughout the whole poem, there's a very strong suggestion of an affinity between him and this mysterious dimension. He says, infinity above me, like the blue sky, do I see. Below in me lies the reflection of infinity. So there's something about his experience which is that corresponds to something about the nature of the world, even the nature of reality, you could say. It's quite big stuff that he puts into a very, very succinct form. I'll just read it one more time. Above me broods a world of mysteries and magnitudes. I see, I hear more than what strikes the eye or meets the ear. Within me sleep potencies deep, unfathomably deep, which, when awake, the bonds of life, death, time, and space will break. Infinity above me, like the blue sky, do I see. Below, in me, lies the reflection of infinity. So in the poem, he's very much attracted to or responding to or has an affinity with something outside of him, something, a world of mysteries and magnitudes. Um, but I want to read you now a piece where he's talking about someone outside of him. He's looking up to a person, not this more sort of abstract kind of. Um, I don't mean abstract in a pejorative sense, but a more abstract kind of sense of things. So this is a piece that he wrote about the Gaurava Sutta in Adhisthana in April 2017. So this is 70 years after he wrote that poem. It's quite amazing to have a writing career that spans 70 decades, but it's quite literally 70 years. So he's a 22-year-old in the poem and a 92-year-old in this piece, or a 91-year-old. This is what he says about Gaurava, the quality of reverence. I have never found it difficult to look up. As a boy, I looked up to such heroes as Alfred the Great, Robin Hood, and Sir Walter Raleigh, as well as to the gods and heroes of ancient Greece and Scandinavia. Later on, I was to enjoy Carlyle's Heroes in Hero Worship, though not all his heroes were mine. In my teens, I discovered the painters, sculptors, and architects of the Italian Renaissance, some of whom seemed to tower above ordinary humanity. I also discovered the great poets and playwrights of my own country, as well as its great prose writers of both sexes. To all of these I looked up with admiration, wonder, and delight, rejoicing that such individuals had lived and worked among us, and that the products of their genius were still available to us. It was in my teens, too, that I extended my horizon beyond Europe to take in the wise men of Asia, and especially the Buddha, whom I came to see not just as a historical figure, but as the embodiment of reality. I came to look up not only to the Buddha and to his Dharma and his enlightened disciples, but also to those religious geniuses who, in India, China, and Tibet, had helped to bring out the significance of certain aspects of his teaching. Nearer home, I looked up to and still look up to my personal teachers, honoring and respecting them as best I can in my own life and teaching. I look up to Jagdish Kashyap, who taught me Pali and Abhidharma. I look up to Chatrul Sangye Dorje, who gave me the Green Tara initiation. I look up to Kacha Rinpoche, who gave me the Padmasambhava sadhana. I look up to Jamyang Khyentse Rinpoche, who initiated me into the sadhanas of Manjughosha, Avalokiteshvara, Vajrapani, and Green Tara. I look up to Dudjom Rinpoche, who initiated me into the Vajrasattva sadhana. I look up to Dado Rinpoche, who initiated me into the White Tara sadhana and gave me the Bodhisattva precepts. I look up to Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, who introduced me to Jambala, to the Amitabha Poa, and to Kuru Kule. I look up to Yogi Chen, who shared with me the treasures of Vajrayana and Chan. I look up to all these compassionate teachers whose influence has entered into my life and has through me entered the life of the Triratna Buddhist order. To them do I look up with devotion and endless gratitude. The fact that I find it easy to look up, especially to my spiritual teachers, does not mean that I am able to do this simply because I am of the devotional rather than of the intellectual type. One's personal type has little to do with it. The capacity to look up to something or someone higher than oneself is inherent in human nature and reaches across religions and cultures. In his or her spiritual life, the Buddhist seeks to balance faith and wisdom, meditation and vigor, all with the help of the central faculty of mindfulness or awareness. On certain important occasions, whether in one's individual life or in the life of a whole community, there may be a special outpouring of devotion and gratitude towards a certain person or persons. In the Triratna Buddhist order, this may occur in connection with one's private and public preceptors at the time of ordination. I have witnessed it on a much larger scale in the case of the attitude of the new Buddhists of India who feel an unbounded devotion to Dr. Ambedkar, who led them from bondage to freedom, from darkness to light, and from despair to hope. Any attempt to minimize the importance of devotion in the spiritual life or to limit it to a particular personality type is a betrayal of the Buddha's teaching and does less than justice to human nature. So I know that's kind of a long quote, but I wanted to read all of it because he starts by talking about this quality and his own capacity for it and the importance of that in his life, but then draws an important conclusion from that. Well, not just, he doesn't draw a conclusion from that. He basically points out that it's not something that's peculiar to him, that it's something much deeper in the nature of human life, but also in the nature of the Buddhist spiritual life. And, that blame that he's describing in the poem and in that piece burned brightly through his whole life, I would say. And he felt it, but he also fed it. Um, so he's pointing out something that's really fundamental, that's basic to the Dharma life. And, you know, he's talking about reverence, which is how the word Gaurava, which is his starting point, how it translates, which is connected with faith, which is connected with inspiration. Faith, of course, being Shraddha or confidence, trust, as it's sometimes described. And of course, this, has often been pointed out that this is, in a way, the starting point. It sets us going. This sense, it's like the fourth sight that there's something more to life than what we normally experience. And of course, it's the first faith or Shraddha is the first positive mental event enumerated in the Abhidharma analysis of positive mental states. So, what can we learn from Bhante in relation to this quality of faith or inspiration? How do we keep this flame burning in our life and work? Now, there's a famous story that I've heard quoted a number of times. Famous, when I say famous, I mean famous in our order. um, but he talks about guarding your sources of inspiration. People often quote this, and I've thought about it quite a bit. Bhante said you need to guard your sources of inspiration. So in a moment, we'll have an opportunity to share what our sources of inspiration are. Um, I'm not actually going to, I was going to talk about some, there's sort of things that we can talk about, like there's Kalyana Mitrata, there's the order, there's Dharma study, there's communicating the Dharma, there's meditation, there's beauty and the greater mandala of aesthetic appreciation. There's the work that we do itself can be inspiring. Um, so the idea of guarding is quite an important one, of course, in Buddhism. Like, for example, Shantideva says that one should guard one's mind as one guards one's eyes. It's that sort of fundamental that we need to learn this quality of appramada, of vigilance or diligence or conscientiousness or heedfulness. Um, and I think particularly when we're involved in a lot of different things, which we all are, I'm sure. Um, I think one aspect of this guarding is consciously deciding what to engage with and what not to engage with. It's so easy just to get sucked into this thing and that thing. And we can often miss what's best because we're involved in this, that, and the other. So I think guarding can be an important, well, it is an important element of deliberately choosing rather than just getting drawn into this, that, and the other. So, when I was looking for this quote I thought I'm actually going to try and find where Bante says this. So I looked through a few different things. I didn't have much success, but I did find a discussion which was really interesting, which I wanted to share with you. And what it is it's some questions and answers which have been transcribed from 1981, and you've got a group of chairs of centers sitting around talking. I'm assuming it's at Padmaloka. I'd be very surprised if it isn't. There's characters like Nagabodhi, Abhaya is there, Mangala is there, I think Lokamitra is there, um, there's Prakash is there. They're sitting around talking, And there's this lovely piece where they're all just sharing what they find inspiring. Something we might do in a moment, actually. What are their sources of inspiration? And then the question arises, well, how do you lose your inspiration? And Bante says something which I thought I'd share with you just because it's quite interesting. It's a slightly different angle on this idea of guarding one's sources of inspiration. He says, this is what Bante says in 1981. More specifically, it does seem, and here I think we come back to how chairmen, and they were all chairmen at that point, lose their inspiration, that you mustn't allow things to get on top of you. The initiative must rest with you, because if you allow things to get on top of you, you are having simply to respond to the situation. Perhaps respond is not quite the right word. You have to cope with the situation instead of setting up the situation. If you're always on the defensive and simply have to deal with things that people bring to you to deal with, then your inspiration dries up because you've become essentially passive to circumstances instead of being active. I suspect that this is one of the ways in which chairmen start losing their inspiration. So when you say create space for yourself, or even when you go and meditate, among other things, you are keeping all those pressures at bay and you are creating the possibility of yourself taking initiative. So it does seem very important that chairmen shouldn't allow circumstances and things to be done to get on top of them, so that they're functioning entirely in accordance with the pressures that are being exerted upon them. Do you see what I'm getting at? Because if you feel passive, which means you feel weak, well, you lose your sense of initiative, you lose your drive, you lose your inspiration, you become resentful perhaps, you feel pressured, you feel you're being forced to do something, then you feel that you're just acting out of duty. Actually, you're not acting at all. So he's making this distinction between just merely coping and setting up the situation, of being defensive or reactive, or being creative, of being passive or retaining the initiative, or letting things get on top of you, or being in control of the situation. So we can talk about this in a moment. Naga Bodhi then says something, and Sangharakshita says something interesting in response. He says, this is Naga Bodhi now. So what do you do if things do get on top of you, and if the people you are working with aren't supportive? We've stated the ideal. And then Bhante says, no, it isn't an ideal, simply that you shouldn't allow things to get on top of you. It's a necessity. Because if you allow that to happen, you'll definitely lose your inspiration in due course. It's only a matter of time, unless there is some change. So, what you mustn't allow to happen under any circumstances is for things to get on top of you. And that is more of a question of a psychological attitude than it is a question of any amount of work. So I think this is actually quite a helpful discussion, because I always feel like I've got more to do than I have time to do. Probably all of you feel like that, that there's any number of things, but sometimes that's oppressive when if I lose the initiative with it, and sometimes it's just, well, there's lots of things to do, and I need to get on with it, you know. Um, so that's something to think about. So I just read you what it says again. So you mustn't allow to have what so what you mustn't allow to happen under any circumstances is for things to get on top of you. And that is more a question of a psychological attitude than it is a question of any amount of work. And then he said, I'll just give you one other thing he says about this, because I think again it's kind of interesting, and then we can talk about it. This is Bante talking again. Sometimes I've found this myself in the past, that if there's a lot happening that you're supposed to be coping with, one of the best things to do is to take on more work. Doing something just because you want to do it, not because anyone has suggested it or circumstances require it. You just feel like doing it. And that will add to your sense of initiative and enable you to handle all the other things better too. So yeah, so I've talked a little bit about Bhante as a devotee, somebody who looks up and who feeds that. And yeah, I've talked about what that means for us in our work, and just brought in a few things from Bhante. First of all, about guarding our sources of inspirational faith, um, and then a few thoughts about from him about maintaining initiative. Um, So we've got about half an hour now just to discuss that. So, I'm like offering these little prompts, but like talk about whatever you want to talk about. If something stimulates your interest. So first, yeah, here's a few prompts. So, what are your sources of faith? Where do you look to for inspiration? How do you guard them? Or if, which is like, how do you or how might you? Um, and then how do you maintain initiative or how might you maintain initiative? So I'll give you an example. One of the things, it's a simple thing that I try and do is in terms of retaining the initiative is when I'm working, I try and decide what I'm going to do the following day, the previous day. So I try and do something in the morning where I'm really grappling with something big. Otherwise, what happens is I just end up doing little bits and pieces and responding to this email and that WhatsApp message, and I never really feel like I get into anything. So if I start with something kind of that's a little bit more substantial, and it can make quite a difference to the way that my whole day feels. Um, Anyway, so there's some things that hopefully are stimulating. So we've actually we'll have about, let's say about 25 minutes in our groups to discuss.
I've set up new groups, Jnanadhara.
Oh, okay,
That
cool.
all right?
Yeah,
Slightly
cool.
different.
Yeah,
Okay.
mix it up.
So room two for you again.
Thanks.
Hang on. Oh, you said 25 minutes. Yeah, I did that.